Okay, everybody, welcome to the Starrcade preview for 2002, and what will be the last show on TEW 2016 for the series as we transfer over everything to 2020 and begin everything there anew in 2003. So what I'm hoping for is if you watch this preview, you'll be able to understand all the feuds, and all the matches for this next Starrcade, and you'll be able to watch Starrcade and then watch the 2003. Watch the first show in TEW 2020 in 2003 and not be totally lost. So after this, we'll start going over all the matches, all the background, and how we got here. But as you can see, Starrcade this year will be live on December 29th, 2002, which is the actual last Sunday of the year in 2002, live from the Staples Center in the beautiful city of Los Angeles, Los Angeles, California, where Bill Goldberg will try to win back the world title. There will be a final battle between the Light Brigade and the Deadpool. There will be a 2 out of 3 falls for the WCW World Tag Team titles. There will be a 6-way Ignition Cruiserweight title match involving 4 international stars and a mystery man. Multiple big heavyweight battles. A match where Shane Helms will try to take out another legend as he takes on Kevin Nash. And more. There could be only one match that could open Starrcade, even though that's mostly because it's in a steel cage, so we don't want to set it up twice. But basically, one of the big matches to start off the night will be Billy Kidman take on Rey Mysterio Jr. with the WCW United States Championship on the line. So as you all know, Kidman and Rey have been 2-time World Tag Team Champions before the restart of WCW, along with the Cruiserweight Tag Team reign. And even though they managed to win another World Tag title as partners at the start of this save, this really started way back at the last Starrcade in a way, when Billy Kidman defeated Shane Douglas to win the U.S. title, and then he had started teaming with Booker T, and he had even defeated Ric Flair at Ignition to retain the U.S. title in a big win, but then he had lost the U.S. title to Jeff Jarrett at Super Bowl, and then he lost the rematch in March, and then the problems really continued as he started a feud with Shane Helms, who as part of his Legend Killer gimmick wanted to also kill the legends of the past cruiserweights such as Ray Jr. and Billy Kidman. And one could say even the bigger problem is that after being thrown together, Alex Wright and Ray Jr. on the same night that Billy Kidman lost his rematch, they won the tag titles. Well, at Spring Stampede, Alex and Ray lost the tag titles, while Kidman was beaten up by Shane Helms. But it looks like things were back on track as the Holy Animals of Ray and Kidman were back together, and they defeated the Silver City Rollers, which set up a big 6-man match because Silver City Rollers or Shane Helms, they continue to be Shane Helms basically lackeys, so this set up a big 6-man, but at that 6-man where it was Helms and Silver City Rollers against Wright, Ray, and Kidman got frustrated and walked away, leading Tori Wilson to home, leading Tori Wilson slapping him, and then Kidman completely walking away. After that, Kidman allied with Helms, and then he revealed he had a new woman, Misty, who, if you Google search Christy Mist, will have some fun videos online if you're over 18. So at the Great American Bash, the heels won, as there was a tag match between Helms and Kidman taking on Ray Mysterio Jr. and Alex Wright, and ended with Misty stripping Tori. And then at Bash of the Beach, Billy Kidman defeated Ray Jr., and it looked like the feud was over as they went their separate ways. While Ray Jr. was involved in the tag division with RVD and Wright, while Billy Kidman temporarily allied with the Deadpool to be in a War Games match, all while defeating veterans like Fit Finlay and Dustin Rhodes, and finally ending the year by feuding with Chuck Palumbo as part of the Mayhem tournament, and then defeating Palumbo at Mayhem for the U.S. title. Well, the night after Mayhem at Nitro, Billy Kidman was cutting a promo when Ray Jr. came out and said he wanted a shot at the U.S. title. Kidman said he would have to defeat a man of Kidman's choosing to get the title shot. The next week on Nitro, Ray Jr. Defeated Lance Storm to earn that U.S. title shot, only to end up with a U.S. title upside his head as Kidman attacked him from behind after the match. But how this became a cage match is after a big 6-man involving Booker, Palumbo, and Ray Jr. taking on Kidman and Team Canada. Bischoff said he didn't want anybody, including the women, or any of Kidman's friends in the Deadpool, or Conan or anybody else getting involved in this match and ending it. So he wanted, he wanted a clean victory. So he made this match a cage match. So now these are former close friends, former tag partners, turned bitter enemies, but only one man will get the win inside the steel cage and walk out of Starrcade, the U.S. champion, and we'll see at Starrcade who that man is. Next up, we have a big tag match of Old School versus New School as America's Most Wanted faces off against Dustin Rhodes and Conan. The build up to this is after defeating the Road Warriors at Havoc and Mayhem, including basically ending their WCW run by throwing them off a stage. On the Nitro after Mayhem, the MBW cut a promo that was basically interrupted by Dustin Rhodes saying they're basically, they're bringing shame to the sport, thinking that just because they won a couple of matches, they're, the new hot shit. But, sometimes, Old School strikes back. So the next week on Nitro, AMW called out Dustin for next week. So then the next week after that, Dustin actually came out with a partner who was Conan. So basically, the America's Most Wanted backed off, and they called out a replacement for that week, which was Edith Skipper and Kid Romeo. So then Dustin and Conan defeated them, and then the match was made for Starrcade of AMW taking on Dustin Rhodes and Conan, and that'll be it. So it'll be a tag match of Old School versus New School to see if Old School can stand tall or America's Most Wanted will continue their run over the old blood of World Championship Wrestling and be part of the new rising tide of youngsters in World Championship Wrestling. Next up, we have a match that's a lot more simpler as far as the setup, as after Ray Jr. had officially been declared the #1 time contender for the United States title, it was announced there would be a mini tournament to determine the new #1 contender. And in the first match, Alex Wright went over to Tajiri during the 3rd week of December. And then on the 4th week of December, Kaz defeated Jason Jett after basically tagging him in the entrance and getting the victory. So as you see in front of you on the screen, the winner of the match will get the U.S. Next title shot at whoever will be the U.S. champion, on the first Nitro after Starrcade. The next match is a women's tag match as part of the burgeoning and growing new WCW women's division, and this started back in October when Lexi James, who you also might know as Alexis Lurie or Mickie James, defeated Jordan Cole, who you might know as the Chrissy Vane during mid-2000s WWE, where Lexi defeated Jordan after they had an argument. And then during October, Cole built her Beach Bay babyface character, and then at Halloween Havoc that year, Beth Reacts defending the women's title, defeated Lexi James. And then on a show in November, week 1 on Saturday night, Jordan Cole actually defeated Mickie James. And then that led to basically it being declared that the title match at Mayhem would be Beth Reacts defending both against Cole and Lexi in a 3-way match. So that led to, of course, a couple weeks later, this led to Lexi James cutting a promo on Jordan and Phoenix. But then they had another match on the week 4 November Nitro, where after Jordan Cole defeated somebody, Lexi ran in to beat her up, to soften her up for the 3-way at Mayhem, but then Phoenix ran in for the save, and we had the standard 3-way showdown to set up a 3-way title match. At Mayhem, Beth Phoenix did retain the title, but then on the first week of December, on Nitro, Amber O'Neal debuted, calling out the women's roster, basically doing an arrogant heel gimmick. And then on that following Saturday night, Gail Kim defeated Jordan Cole, and then Amber O'Neal did a beatdown, basically sending a message to the rest of the roster. A couple weeks later, at Nitro, Lexi James defeated Jordan Cole after cheating to win, thanks to help from Amber O'Neal. Then there was a 2-on-1 beatdown, and that's when Celine Carter, who you also might know as Lufisto, made her debut in WCW, saving Jordan and running both Lexi and O'Neal off. The next week on Nitro, Celine and Cole won a tag match and challenged Amber and Lexi for a tag match at Starrcade, which was accepted. Our next match is a big heavyweight battle between Chicolombo and Mike Awesome. And this is a pretty straightforward match, or to set up, as at the beginning of December, Chuck Palumbo came out to stop Mike Awesome from cheating during a Mayhem tournament match, and from there was an argument. And the next week on Nitro, Awesome cut a promo basically saying since Palumbo got in his business, he is going to destroy him. And then the week after that, Palumbo called out Awesome, saying that he isn't going to be destroyed by anybody who was a fat kick thriller a couple years ago, because shoot comments. From there, Awesome came out and there was a brawl, and finally there was a big six-man, where Booker, Chuck, and Ray taking on Kidman and Team Canada of Awesome and Storm to basically set everything up. And there you go, a pretty much straight-ahead match where we have the veteran, former, king of hardcore, Mike Awesome, taking on the young, former natural-born thriller, Chuck Palumbo, who has been impressive so far in WCW this year. Winning the United States title, feuding with upper tier stars, bigger stars like Mike Awesome, and even taking on Billy Kidman, the current United States champion. So the question is, will Chuck Palumbo be part of that rising tide of young WCW stars, or will the former extreme champion be able to fight off Palumbo? We have a big cruiserweight scramble match next, as for the last couple months, Morningstar, who you might know better as Christopher Daniels, has been a dominant cruiserweight champion, defeating Jason Jett at Halloween Havoc, and then winning a four-way, including Jett, Kaz, and Tajiri at Mayhem. So the first week of December, Morningstar cut a promo, basically putting over his dominance of the cruiserweight division, and Barishoff came out, basically applauded him for having some confidence, but then he he basically interrupted him to announce the cruiserweight scramble, where will be a six-way match involving some of the best cruiserweights in the world. And basically the next week on Nitro, Morningstar defeated Jason Jett in a non-title match, and then we had the first video which interrupted him as he was celebrating, announcing that the Great Suzuki and Ultimo Dragon would be part of the match. And the next week on Nitro, we had the announcement that Jushin Liger would be part of the match. And then finally, on the last go-home show, it was the announcement that Taka Michinoku would also be part of the match. Now that leaves one spot open, and it has been announced that a mystery man will be revealed at Starrcade. So there will be 6 men, all vying to become the WCW World Cruiserweight Champion. Will be Morningstar, who has been a close second hand to Vampiro as part of the Deadpool. Will it be one of the four international stars, or will it be the mystery man who is making his debut at Starrcade? Next, in one of the mini title matches tonight, Beth Reacts defends her WCW World Women's title against Gail Kim. In some ways, this starts way back in the end of September, when as part of the semifinals of the initial WCW World Women's titles tournament, Beth Reacts defeated Gail Kim. But after that, of course, they've had their interactions, because this is a relatively small division so far. But this really started when, back during the second week of December, Gail Kim won a match. And during the match, the announcers went over the fact that Gail Kim had been given the next title match at Starrcade, and she cut a post-match promo on Phoenix saying that, way back in September during that semifinals, Phoenix got lucky and that she should have been the first WCW Women's World Champion. So the next week on Nitro, Beth Phoenix had a backstage promo, and then there was a confrontation with Gail Kim, and they spit some words at each other, and there was almost brawl, and that's where we are. So, not the most fancy setups, but it's pretty simple. Gail Kim thinks she should be the WCW World Women's Champion. Beth Phoenix has been, proving that, women can actually be strong wrestlers here in World Championship Wrestling. And only one woman can walk out of Starrcade with the Women's World Championship title, and we'll find out who that is at Starrcade. Next up, we have a match that's about who's actually best in the world, and this is a result, of the U.S. title feud, in a way, as Booker T had saved Ray Jr. when Lance Storm and Billy Kidman had tried to beat him up in the aftermath of Ray Jr. actually, winning the U.S. title shot. So, on a Nitro, during the week 3 of December, Booker, cut a promo, says, he saved Ray Jr. last week from 2 idiots, and Storm has been talking about the last couple weeks about he's the best wrestler in the world. Well, my plate's empty, so come face, the five-time world champion at Starrcade. So the match was set up, and then there was the big six-man that I talked about earlier, which was, Booker, Chuck, and Ray taking on Kidman and Team Canada. So, this is a pretty straightforward match. Two great wrestlers fighting to determine who truly is one of the best in the world. And we'll figure out who that is at Starrcade. We're moving on to matches that are involving even bigger stars, as it's Kevin Nash versus Shane Helms. And this all started out, as Shane Helms basically has been, his whole 2002, has been taking on legends and defeating them, even though he did face a setback when actually Sting defeated him. But then over the last couple weeks during the month of October and November, Helms had been complaining about not being part of the top tier of competition, World Championship Wrestling, and he was claiming it was a conspiracy stopping because WCW Brass was upset that he was taking out legends and making them showing them to be the humans that they really are instead of the heroes. And as part of that, like I said, Sting had defeated Shane Helms during the Mayhem tournament, and also as part of the Mayhem tournament, Kevin Nash had gotten to the semifinals. But then, the next night on Nitro, he had cut a promo basically, pointing to retirement when Shane Helms had come out, basically making fun of him for being an old, broken down man with gray hair, bad knees, and everything else. And they've all, they got in a brawl, which Nash had gotten the advantage of because he's Kevin Nash and, he's Shane Helms, when Gigantes, who you may know better as The Wall, came from behind and attacked Nash. Of course, Gigantes has been Helms basically, bodyguard for the past couple of months. But the next week on Nitro, Nash came out and caused a DQ, beating up Cash and Reno, who are the Silver City Rollers, and who are basically, Helms, lackeys. He called out Helms, but this time, again, Gigantes came in from the crowd and attacked Nash from behind. So at the next Nitro, we finally had a match between Nash and Gigantes. It was short, as you'd expect, as it was a DQ where Nash went over when there basically was a beatdown of Helms, Cash, Reno, and Gigantes all being down, forming Big Sexy, and it ended up with Helms telling Nash as he was down on the ground, "Come to Starrcade if you want to be retired, and join your buddy Hall and your buddy Hogan, at the glue farm." And then finally at the Go Home show, we had basically a preview match where Steiner and Helms actually defeated Nash and Sean OHair, which will be the match I'm going to go over next, which will be Scott Steiner and Sean OHair. But that's the setup. Kevin Nash, who even without, the problems that he's had as far as being a booker, can be declared a WCW legend, starting the NWO invasion, creating the Wolfpack, ending Bill Goldberg's streak, now has to take on Shane Helms, a guy who has been very successful after his heel turn here in WCW this time around, and he has been killing legends, so will he take possibly the biggest scalp of his career, defeating Kevin Nash at Starrcade. As I said, the next match on the bill is Sean OHair taking on Scott Steiner, and this all started as part of the Mayhem tournament, as Steiner had defeated Sean OHair, but, Steiner wasn't happy with just defeating Sean OHair, so he beat him down, locked him in the Steiner recliner, but Ray Jr. had tried to save, as Steiner was his opponent for the next part of the tournament, but he got beat down as well, but this allowed Steiner to be not be aware for a moment, and allowed Sean OHair to slip in from behind and hit the Widowmaker on Steiner, leaving him down. So that was it for now, as, Steiner was involved in the tournament. But then, the second week of December, Goldberg had defeated Steiner as part of his push towards Starrcade. But then Steiner had tried to take out Goldberg, again, locking him in the Steiner recliner, but Sean OHair had saved him. And then the next week on Nitro, Sean OHair, cut a promo, basically challenging Steiner, but out of nowhere, Steiner had attacked him because he's Scott Steiner. What does he care about comedy during an interview? And then finally, like I said, we had a setup match, we had a preview tag match as Scott Steiner and Helms took on Kevin Nash and Sean OHair. So again, this is another generational battle of a type, as Scott Steiner has been successful here in this incarnation of WCW, winning the world title, being a top heel, but now, he's, has to face Sean OHair, who, isn't a small guy himself. And so, two Titans clash here as part of the heavyweight division, and Sean OHair takes on Scott Steiner, and he'll walk out the winner, the Big Booty Daddy, or, another member of that new rising tide of youngsters here in World Championship Wrestling at Starrcade. Now we're really beginning to get to the big matches, as we have a tag team title match between Air Raid and the Horseman duo of Shane Douglas and Jeff Jarrett in a 2 out of 3 falls match. So this all really begins back at Great American Bash 2002, when Air Raid defeated Jindrak and Stasiak and Yankee Noble in a 3-way for the tag titles. But the very next week on Nitro, the day after Great American Bash, Jarrett and Douglas basically came out and called tag titles Horseman property. The next week on Nitro, Douglas defeated AJ Styles in a match. Then Jarrett and Douglas went for a spike pile driver on AJ to end this feud before it even began. But Air Paris saved AJ with the dive. But at Bash at the Beach of 2002, Jarrett and Douglas did manage to win the tag titles. Then, at Clash of the Champions, Air Raid defeated Silver City Rollers in a match to build them back up, where both Jarrett and Douglas retained the tag titles against X-Ray and Rey Mysterio Jr. And then we had a Fall Brawl where Air Raid won a 4-way tag match. Well, Horsemen, were involved in War Games, which they lost, which led to, at Halloween Havoc, Ray Jr. and Rob Van Dam earning a shot at the tag titles. But meanwhile, the day after Havoc, Air Raid, who, like I said, had been on a roll, as had a big couple wins, they called out Jarrett and Douglas, for a shot at the tag titles. But so far, the Jarrett and Douglas did not respond during that week, or at the next Nitro, sort of, brushing them off during the interview. But then at the end of the next week's Nitro, Goldberg and Horseman brawl, and ended with Air Raid showing up, and then both diving on top of the Horseman from the top of the WCW sign at the head of the ramp. So the next week on Nitro, we had the Horsemen having a showdown with RVD and Air Raid, leading to a match of Horseman versus RVD and Air Raid. And then finally at Mayhem, in the big tag title match, Air Raid won by DQ when Jarrett and Douglas saved their tag team titles by, hitting them with it. So the next week, so for the show after Mayhem, during that Nitro, the Horsemen were partying after having successfully keeping their titles, both the world and tag team titles. But then, Air Raid, it was then mentioned on commentary that Air Raid were talking to Bischoff. And, they were being given a rematch for their tag titles due to the way that it ended. But then the next week, on Nitro, we had a match. And then next week on Nitro, we had a match where it was Shane Douglas taking on Air Paris. And then Shane Douglas won, and then after the match, it was declared by Jarrett and Douglas that, they didn't want to deal with any of these, young kids thinking they could, win titles just by hitting a few big aerial moves and getting lucky. So at Starrcade, the World Tag Title match would be 2 out of 3 falls. So the next week on Nitro, like I said, there was a big 8-man tag, including Goldberg, RVD, and Air Raid taking on the Horsemen. And then finally, we had the final, go-home match, where RVD and AJ had a no contest with Ric Flair and Jeff Jarrett when the match devolved into chaos. So that's where we are, 6 months after winning the tag titles and losing them in only a month. Air Raid are now, after, and also at basically being ready to win the tag titles last month. Now at Starrcade, can they finally go over that hump and win a 2 out of 3 falls tag match against Shane Douglas and Jeff Jarrett, who have been fantastic members of the Horsemen? Or will the Horsemen continue their dominance of the tag division? That question will be answered at Starrcade. So now we have the match, which, even though it's not the main event, it has indeed the most, the longest backstory of them all, as the Deadpool of Vampiro, Lestat, and Macias will take on the Light Brigade of Sting, Lex Luger, and DDP in an elimination match. This, you could say this all began even before the reboot of WCW, but for our purposes, everything started up again way back in July of 2001, at the very beginning of this, when after a match the lights went out and Vampiro took out Sting. This led to a match at Clash of the Champions in August of 2001 where Sting defeated Vampiro, but in November, Vampiro actually confronted Sting and said he's the new Warrior of Pain, and that Sting is just an old man on his last legs, thinking a Hal and a new coat of paint will make him young again. At Mayhem, in November of 2001, we had a match between Sting and Vampiro, but it went to double DQ, and as both men brawled to the, basically, the ringside, to the ramp again, Vampiro actually sent Sting off the stage, seemingly, setting him and possibly ending his career. And actually, the night after Mayhem, Vampiro said there would be a funeral for Sting the next week. And, at the very next week, to end the show, Sting, there was Sting's funeral with pallbearers, including Vampiro, but then the lights went out, and, when they came back up, nothing was there. So then, for the go-home show for Starrcade, which was Booker, who was going for the world title, taking on Vampiro, Booker then, because the whole time during this build-up, Vampiro had been calling out Sting, saying, that he's scared of, of coming back, but, Vampiro will be there at Starrcade waiting for him. So, so the match went to a DQ, where Vampiro, and Scott Steiner, who was a world champion at the time, beating down Booker, but then Sting came down from the rafters with his bat, and basically, declared that, Sting, that, he would be at Starrcade. So, and then at Starrcade, just when it looked like it would be finally time for Sting to win the, for Sting to win the feud, Vampiro actually attacked Sting during the entrance, locked him in the casket that was at ringside, because it was announced it would be a casket match, and then set the casket on fire. So, at that point, it looked like Sting was actually gone. Vampiro, we talked about, he had, ended Sting once and for all. And then the next month at Rising Fury, he even defeated Diamond Dallas Page to set himself up as the #1 contender. So at Super Brawl, the world title match was between Booker and Vampiro. So Booker had defeated Vampiro, but, Vampiro attacked as Booker was celebrating at the top of the ramp, and it looked like he was going to hit the nail in the coffin on the ramp. But again, Sting came down from the rafters, and, basically announced that he was back once again. So 2 weeks after that, on Nitro, Vampiro interrupted a Sting promo. Basically, it was shown he was outside in, what looked like a nice suburban area. And, he said, the neighborhood in Orange County where the Borden house looks quite lovely. So, basically then the video cut, Sting ran to the back, and, it was unknown at that time what had happened. Then the next week on Nitro, we had a video from quote-unquote last week, where Vampiro was in Sting's, empty house. Sting arrived, there was a brawl in the house, and Vampiro went through one of the glass doors into the patio area. Then at Rising Fury, Sting actually defeated Vampiro, but the lights went out, and then at that point, Vampiro was gone. So at that point, it looked like in spring, Vampiro had finally won the feud. But at the Great American Bash in 2002, Vampiro made his return, and over the next couple months, his Deadpool was formed, which include, Messias, who you may know better as Judas Messias from TNA, in the real world, and Lestat, who you may know better as Gangrel. And also, Vampiro was there for a second, but we won't talk about that because he had drug issues. But regardless, over the summer, the feud was, the two feuds was basically, Shane Helms trying to take out Sting, as he's the biggest legend in WCW, and Vampiro going after RVD, who was the US champion. But as that all ended at the beginning of September, there was a Deadpool when being a whole bunch of jobbers, but then Sting Luger tried to make the save, but also at that point Dustin Rhodes made his return to, actually save, to actually even the odds. And then the next couple weeks later, there was the announcement of War Games, and then next week, during the go-home show, Vampiro and Kidman were jumped by Sting and Luger in the backstage area. Then at Fall Brawl, there was the big War Games match between Deadpool and Billy Kidman, taking on the babyface team of Sting, Ray Jr., Dustin Rhodes, Lex Luger, and DDP, but Deadpool actually went over. And then a week later, or not a week later, but the next night, Messias and Lestat basically, attacked Luger and, beat him down and killified him in the middle of the ring. Attacked him, and then that set up an actual match between Messias and Luger, where, Messias defeated Luger. The Deadpool had another beatdown, but Sting and Dustin saved. And then, all during this, Vampiro had earned a title shot as a result of his team winning the War Games, but but also so had Booker as a result of the babyface team defeating the Horseman. So it had been set up as a three-way match. So, you know, at the same time that Sting and Luger were dealing with the rest of the Deadpool, Vampiro was going for the world title. Well, at Halloween Havoc 2002, Kanyon retained the retained the world title, but also Sting and Luger took on Mysterio and Lestat, and you know that match basically devolved into chaos. And then, as part of Mayhem, both men advanced in the tournament to the semifinals at Mayhem. So, but there, Steiner fell to Sting. Well, Vampiro defeated Kevin Nash, but Goldberg won the finals. But then, you know, after Mayhem, there was a big match between Sting and DDP taking on Vampiro and Lestat that basically led to a brawl. And then the next week on Nitro, Sting, you know, cut a long promo going, you know, over the whole history and saying he wanted it over. You know, so he called out Vampiro and he challenged him to an elimination match between the Deadpool and his team at Starrcade in an elimination match, like I said. So at the beginning of the next week of Nitro, Sting opened the show, revealed his team of Sting, DDP, and Luger. And then, you know, then there was later video of Vampiro with the rest of the Deadpool readying a quote-unquote sacrifice. So then at the end of the show, after like, I mean like the end of the show after like a show-ending brawl between the babyfaces and the Horsemen, the Light Brigade invaded Vampiro's quote-unquote graveyard, burned it down, and saved the girl who was being ready for a sacrifice inside of the graveyard. And then at Nitro, the last Nitro, before Starrcade, Sting defeated Lestat, and then there was a final confrontation with Vampiro, where, you know, words were said, and now here we are. You know, what's been termed the final battle between, you know, light and dark. Sting, Lex Luger, who's been part of WCW forever, the People's Champion Diamond Dallas Page, taking on Vampiro, Mysterio, who has been a monster so far in WCW, and Lestat, the Vampire Warrior. Only one team will survive and be the victors, and the only question is who will be that team at Starrcade. Finally, it's the main event. WCW World Heavyweight title. Kanyon, the champion, taking on Bill Goldberg, the challenger. Now, to go over this match, we have to go to actually Kanyon's background. Way back at Bash at the Beach 2001, he had been given a world title shot, but in many ways that was seen as Eric Bischoff trying to avoid giving the loose cannon Scott Steiner a shot at taking the title off Diamond Dallas Page. But, you know, after that, he defeated Booker T, somewhat surprisingly, at Clash of the Champions, somewhat cleanly, and then over the next couple of months, he had teamed up with Jeff Jarrett and Shane Douglas to feud with the babyface team of Ric Flair, Conan, and Dustin Rhodes. But then, of course, at Halloween Havoc, Ric Flair turned on that babyface team, and there was a formation of the New Horseman of Ric Flair, Kanyon with his second, Johnny Lawler, and of course Jarrett and Douglas. So this led to two big matches at that Starrcade of Ric Flair taking on Mysterio Jr. and Kanyon defeating Dustin at Starrcade. So through that first part of 2002, after winning at Starrcade, he was involved in a long feud with Booker and DDP along with the rest of the Horsemen over the world title, even though Booker was successful in retaining the title. And then, but this all led to, you know, it seeming like, again, Kanyon had been defeated clean a couple times, so he's out, but, you know, after having a bit of a winning streak, you know, he challenged Sting at Great American Bash and defeating him once again, giving him another world title shot. And then at Bash at the Beach, he defeated Booker, winning the World Heavyweight title, getting the world title back to the Horseman. So, you know, he had retained the world title the next couple months, and this all leads to Bill Goldberg returning at Halloween Havoc 2002, and then, you know, running through the Mayhem tournament, winning the Mayhem tournament, and, you know, not waiting, you know, to get his title shot. He, you know, basically right after he won the Mayhem tournament, he ended the show by saying, "Kanyon, you're next." So then the day after that on Nitro, you know, Steiner challenged Goldberg, you know, because Steiner still firmly believes, you know, he's had a couple title shots, but it's Scott Steiner. So, you know, sanity, not the whole part of the package. He, you know, said he still thinks he should be the world champion, and that it's that WCW management doesn't want him at top. So Goldberg, you know, took on Steiner at Nitro the next week, and Goldberg went over Steiner, but Steiner tried to take out Goldberg. But OHair saved, that brought out the Horseman, and then that brought out RVD Air Raid, which then led to the big eight-man tag between Goldberg, RVD, and Air Raid taking on the Horseman that I've talked about before the next week on Nitro. And then finally, during the go-home show for Starrcade, There was a contract signing, that was tense, as you'd expect. But then at the end of the show, the big brawl I was talking about, where everything devolved into chaos, it ended with Kidman hitting the flatliner on Goldberg onto the WCW World title. So here we are, the main event of Starrcade 2002. Kidman still trying to answer the question of whether he actually deserves the WCW World title, and Bill Goldberg coming back, trying to succeed and get back to the top, where a lot of people believe he never, should have stopped being there. And there's only one question: who will leave Starrcade 2002 as the WCW World Champion? And, we'll see that answer at Starrcade. So that's it. That's the entire card for WCW Starrcade 2002, which will be live on pay-per-view, live from the Staples Center in beautiful Los Angeles, California. And like I said, that's the last show. It'll be the last show of my TEW 2016 save for WCW 2001. I successfully converted it over to 2003, and I'm just doing some final tweaks to make sure all the data is largely correct and everything simulates correctly. But what will happen is I'll post the WCW Starrcade video, I'll post the end of the year stuff that was for TEW 2016, and then finally, I'll start posting a new series that'll be starting on the first Nitro. Well, it'll be an overview video along with the first Nitro of 2003. So that's it. Thanks for watching, and again, I actually put a lot into this preview, so go and comment if you like it below, give the video a like, or subscribe to the channel if you want more content like this. So that's all for now. So talk to you later, and adios.